I think we can start our session. We can settle now to start our session. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me better? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So warm welcome to our session, and thank you all for making it to this hour of COP29, Baku, 5 o'clock. I want to appreciate you finding time to join all of us here on this conversation of integrating climate finance into locally led development for livelihoods and restoration. A key conversation now that we are talking about climate, flow of climate finance and ending into development for livelihoods across Kenya and other African countries. To kick us off this session, just for purposes of structure, we shall have introductory opening remarks from Mr. Tarus, followed by keynote speaking from Director General Budget, Mr. Albert Mwenda. Then we shall have brief presentations from two organizations. Then we move into panel conversations. Panel discussion, my panelists will come in front. And we shall have about 10 minutes for question and answer. And all this we have to do in 1 hour. So I urge my people who will be coming to talk to be brief and concise so that we can save time on the conversations. Once again, thank you. And it's my opportunity now to introduce our first speaker who will make some opening remarks for us. And that is Mr. Tarus. Mr. Tarus is George Tarus is the acting forestry conservation secretary at the Kenya's State Department for Forestry. I want to welcome you, Mr. Tarus, to make your remarks. Mr. Tarus has been at the forefront in restoration of ecosystems in Kenya, which is also a very good discussion around sustainable development and climate resilience. Under his leadership, the department has been working diligently to implement initiatives that restore degraded lands and conserve biodiversity, which then goes on to support sustainable livelihoods. We are privileged, Mr. George Tarus, to have you with us. Please come and make your remarks now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Milka. Distinguished delegates, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be able to stand before you this afternoon. Basically, to be able to usher in a very important topical subject to us as Kenyans, as a country, because the role of climate financing and more so agroforestry in terms of our climate change intervention, plugging that into the national determined contribution is something we hold so keenly and so dearly as a country. To be able to ensure that the two are seamlessly integrated, Kenya as a country is implementing an ambitious strategy called National Landscape and Restoration Strategy that is aiming to grow 15 billion trees in the next 10 years through 11 intervention areas, where agroforestry is a critical component in delivering that. The most other important issue that I have to mention to you, in so doing, the role of climate change and the role of climate financing is integral to all that. And we are looking at climate finance as an agent for accelerating our restoration efforts as a country, because as we speak, our lands are degraded. And therefore, this discussion that is prioritizing climate finances, prioritizing the role of community-led initiatives that will be able to deliver local adaptive capacities, innovations, and more so bringing in a multifaceted stakeholders. Because behind all this planning, the role of everyone, be it the society, be it the government, has been clearly, of course, documented. And therefore, we are really eager as a country to be able to share our insights on how this is going to be done, learn from the experiences of the people who are seated in this room, and more so, we are looking forward to a very interactive session. And at this point in time, I want to say welcome all, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tarus. If everyone can speak like him, it will be very easy time for me. So it's very interesting. I introduce everyone except myself. So my name is Milka Chebi, Dr. Milka Chebi. I'll be moderating this session. I work for an organization called FST Kenya, Financial Sector Deepening Kenya, that is part of the partner that has made these conversations come to table today. FST Kenya is an independent trust dedicated to the achievement of a financial system that delivers value for green systems and inclusive digital sector. Always a pleasure working with our partners who are here today and others who are not. Now, going into our second speaker, we can talk all manner of things, but the rubber meets the road at where the money is. We cannot speak without talking about money. This is the gentleman who sits at the Kenya's treasury, where we will all be looking up to see what money will come in. So, without much ado, Albert Mwenda. Albert Mwenda is the Director General Budget, Fiscal and Economic Affairs in the National Treasury Kenya. Albert Mwenda has been instrumental and quite at the midst of achieving Kenya's fiscal framework that has delivered all the financials we are talking about, with very deep understanding of the intricate balance between sustainable budgeting and impactful climate action. Under his role, Mr. Mwenda has been pivotal in shaping budgetary allocations that support the nation's climate commitments while fostering an environment conducive to green finance. His expertise in aligning national priorities with climate resilience is crucial for Kenya as we seek to leverage even the private sector and other partners that are with us today. It's a hot seat that he sits on, but we are very happy that you also found time to be here. Mr. Albert Mwenda, always a pleasure having you. Please come give your keynote speech. Thank you.
I want to start by appreciating the partners who have been working with us, without whom would not be here today. I want to thank the FSD Kenya. They are a very good partner. They've supported us indeed in many areas in terms of matters, climate finance, also in other areas relating to deepening the financial sector, and we really appreciate. I want to appreciate JICA, who has also partnered with us, and the government of Japan. I think your support is evident, whether it is in infrastructure, matters of greening, etc., and we really appreciate. I want to also recognize colleagues in government who are seated here. We have here representatives from the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. We also have judiciary represented, the judicial sector represented here, and my colleagues in the National Treasury. I want to appreciate. And therefore, in terms of my remarks, it is a pleasure to be speaking to you today, and it's for a number of reasons. One, we are talking about a topic that is relevant and urgent to address, which is climate related, and the need for climate finance, which is top on the agenda. Indeed, I know that this is a finance COP, and therefore matters finance are very important. It is also important to note that we are facing increasing challenges on climate. We, especially in countries in our region, in particular Kenya, we are facing climate risks, if it is drought or floods. We are recently also seeing an increase in the frequency of call them cyclones or the storms along the coast of the eastern coast. In Kenya in particular, we estimate that every year we have to reorganize our budget, and these climate crises are costing us upwards of 0.2% of GDP and increasing. So that's on average. And therefore, something has to be done. And indeed, we have of late incorporated climate risk statements in our plans. Every year in the budget policy statement, we do, we are now required to include a statement on the climate-related risks and how we intend to address those risks. And therefore, and this forum also reminds us of the importance of both national governments and the subnational governments to take action as quick as we can. Kenya is taking proactive steps through the macro financial policies. As I've mentioned, we are entrenching fiscal climate-related risks into our planning, whether it is in the assessment of the projects before they are introduced into the budget and also into the macro planning model. And therefore, it calls for innovation even in the financing approaches that we pursue. Now, I do also want to underscore that we are gathered here also, and there will be discussions around the county green finance assessment. And it is timely in that counties are expected to contribute to our growth agenda, and therefore whatever happens with the counties is important in our planning trajectory. And therefore, what do we expect? In order to accelerate mobilization of financing for climate and green growth, we need to jointly undertake various interventions aimed at also leveraging private capital to supplement what also the public sector is able to generate. So what do we need to do quickly? And I note I am reminded of time. Number one, I think it is important, even as we reflect on this assessment, to think about how do we align our national and county plans and frameworks to respond to the current challenges. I'll give you an example. For example, we have in place a green fiscal incentive framework. It is intended to incentivize the uptake of green technology and green investments. For example, if you are investing in Kenya today in e-mobility, which is seen as promoting e-mobility, then you have tax incentives if you are an assembler. So we are walking the talk. And that green fiscal incentives is supposed to facilitate that and to help not just the national government, but also investors in the counties to take advantage of opportunities within the green environment and even create jobs. We should also, in terms of leveraging private capital, public-private partnerships are important. And therefore, even within the counties, and I'm looking forward to hear what will come out of this, how can we leverage private sector capital to promote investment in the counties and to help growth, especially in these times when there is little fiscal space in terms of the revenue and borrowing within Kenya to promote development. Number three, we need to embrace innovative ways of raising capital. And here I have in mind the carbon markets. For example, the green bonds. And in this COP, we are discussing Article 6, which lays the foundation for carbon markets. So, and this is relevant also for both the national government in Kenya and the counties. So what opportunities are there, and how should we structure these to ensure that we maximize on the capital opportunities for raising capital. So I look forward to the presentation, and I want to thank FSD for this initiative, and we look forward to partnering with you going forward. Thank you. I hope I did not extend too much, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Albert. Even if you did extend, you know you are a friend to many. We would have allowed, because that's where the money sits. Thank you very much for those key remarks. You know, if you want to be a friend to someone who give you money, your doctor, your teacher, I don't know, but well, sit next to him. I'll go straight to the next person, who is Dr. Anthony Macharia, who is the acting head of agroforestry at the Department for State Corporation, Forestry, at the Ministry of Environment. Is online, and I would like to know if he's ready now to present. Macharia, when you are up, let us know. But at this moment, I really want to appreciate his effort. He is actually one of the person who has made all this come together and bringing us all, coordinating all the teams to COP29. We really appreciate you, Dr. Macharia. Let me know if he's on now. He can do a quick presentation.
Thank you so much, Milka. I've shared my presentation. Hope it's up. You can see it.
It's up, Dr. Macharia, and there is a wholesome lady at the door. If you can see, she will be showing you signs of time. So you have about 5 minutes. Your session begins now, Dr. Macharia. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. I will try to finish within the time. And good afternoon, members. Habari zenu from Kenya. I will present to you on behalf of the State Department for Forestry this keynote presentation on agroforestry as a driving force for NDC achievement, good practices for livelihood improvement, gender and social inclusion. Just as an introduction, is that by agroforestry, we refer to those set of land use practices which involve deliberate integration of woody perennials and agricultural crops or animals in a temporal sequence. So there has to be some science behind it. The system focuses on interaction between trees and livestock for the economic, ecological, and social benefits. In terms of economic development, is that agroforestry contributes to economic development. 70% of the smallholder farmers, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, 70% of the farmers in sub-Saharan Africa are smallholder farmers, and most of these practice agroforestry systems. The agroforest systems directly contribute to employment as well as livelihood and income generation to millions of people. Actually, it's estimated that in sub-Saharan Africa, over 45 million people are supported by agroforestry systems. It is estimated that in Kenya, around 2.4 million trillion shillings are generated in GDP are generated from agroforestry systems. Knowing that 35% of our GDP directly comes from agriculture. However, we have challenges: timber and food and fuel wood shortage, deforestation, land degradation, and climate change. And this has led to more focus on agroforestry initiatives for climate change mitigation and adaptation options. In the NDC estimates, our emissions of greenhouse gases have been increasing all the way from 1995 at 56.8 metric carbon ton equivalent to the 2030 estimate of 143. So we need to counter these. Kenya has committed to reduce emissions by 32% by 2030 from the business as usual scenario. And this, to achieve this, it's estimated that we'll use around 62 billion shillings. So we need to mobilize finance from both private and public and private sources to achieve these important targets. The State Department and the Ministry and the government at large is implementing the National Landscape and Ecosystem Restoration Strategy that will contribute to restoration of 10.6 million hectares. And out of these, around 3 million hectares, around 26% will be in agroforestry systems and 49% in the rangelands, where agroforestry models will really contribute to this restoration. So these initiatives are very key to the achievement of the target. The State Department is developing the agroforestry strategy, expected to be launched in January of this year. And what we are focusing on is value chain development, enhanced access to finance, as well as mainstreaming gender and social inclusion in the strategy development. We have case studies of what we are doing in promotion of agroforestry development. The first is the Green Zone project by the Kenya Forest Service. So far, we've restored 7,169 hectares and benefited over 200,000 farmers, with 49% being women. Then another project we are showcasing today is the School Lunch Tree Growing Club carbon project that aims to improve food and nutrition security through climate change adaptive capacity. And Dr. Ino is in the panel, will explain more on the project. The other project we'll be showcasing today here is the VIA Agroforestry Smallholder Carbon Project. VIA Agroforestry has been doing this since 2007. They have a number of ongoing projects, and also Dr. Monica will be elaborating more on this project and how they improve to climate finance. Challenges to carbon projects is gestation period, cumbersome paperwork, inadequate verifiers locally, methodology which are also complicated, but we can use multiple enterprises and multiple value chains to entice farmers to be involved in these agroforestry programs. Now, in terms of agroforestry development in the country, the challenges we have is weak coordination mechanisms between national and county governments, and evaluation due to inadequate data, inadequate financial support for agroforestry development, and inadequate technical capacity on agroforestry related payment for ecosystem service schemes. However, we have opportunity, including the government goodwill, the landscape and ecosystem restoration program, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, and the medium-term plan, which have talked to agroforestry development. We can leverage on existing financial opportunities like GEF, GCF, and FLOCA to support agroforestry, as well as incentivize. There's also a potential for agroforestry as an incentive for NDC achievement through the effect on productivity and sustainability. In terms of way forward, as I finalize, is that there's need to support agroforestry development in the country for sustainable land use, enhanced provision of ecosystem goods and services, and improved livelihoods. Access to local and global climate finance option is critical to agroforestry development. We can use market and unmarket-based options like carbon trading and payment for ecosystem service to develop, to incentivize agroforestry development in the country for livelihood improvement, climate change mitigation, and adaptation. So members, that is my keynote address, and I thank you for attending this side event.
Thank you very much, Dr. Macharia. I have had a few comments there around carbon credits, green zoning, and I also heard the Director General Budget talking about green incentives and carbon market. So you're really aligned in terms of how we move forward. I'm going to call the second presenter, and by the way, look at the door for the 0 marks. Akusto and Company, we have Ikechukwu Ihegwam, who is the Regional Director, Akusto and Company, East Africa. He will be making a presentation. Akusto and Company is a licensed climate bond standard approved verifier for green and social sustainable bonds, projects and assets in Africa. Additionally, the firm serves as an external reviewer accredited by the ICMA, International Capital Markets Association, and operates as a credit rating agency in Kenya and other multiple jurisdictions in Africa. Ike will be presenting the conversations we are talking about, Director General, that we went assessing counties in terms of opportunities to raise alternative funding, and therefore is coming back with the, it was the lead consultant, is coming back to tell us the findings and the linkage to what PwC Kenya, who is a panelist today, will be talking about the alternative financing. Karibu.
Thank you so much, Dr. Milka and Asante Sana, for that introduction. So mine will be very quickly, just to take us through some of the outcomes of the County Green Finance Assessment, where we are on that journey, and also what's next and what's currently happening today. So this is our presentation speaking around the County Green Finance interventions in Kenya here. And I'll quickly take you through a very short outline, 6 slides maximum, 5 minutes, and we'll be out of here. First of all, we'll speak about the scope of the project and the objective. What do we set out to do? Then we'll talk a little around what did we see in terms of clusters. We'll introduce 4 clusters that we saw on ground that epitomizes Kenya as a nation. Then we'll also speak about the expected outcomes from the assessment we conducted. And finally, where do we move from here? Where do we make finance with the projects, which is called the Green Climate Investment Facility. So that's a quick outline of what I was speaking to you of. Firstly, in terms of the objectives, there were 4 objectives that were set out at the beginning. First, economic and fiscal assessment, trying to understand counties at the subnational. Can they take on additional debt? What the challenges do they have from a fiscal standpoint? Then the next objective was to look at credit risk assessment. Counties, can they go on their own strength to raise finance for infrastructure development projects that are climate related? And thirdly, the next exercise was on asset activity identification. We realized it was important, we needed to know what the counties own or what do they share in terms of natural resources with other counties. And finally, to look at the capabilities from a standpoint of what structures exist that enables mainstreaming of climate finance to the local level, at the ward level, and at the sub-county level. And that was the focus of the assessment we had conducted over a 18-month period. 10 counties were selected, covering the various geography in Kenya, from Nairobi to Embu, to Makueni, to Kirinyaga, to Wajir, to Kisumu, to Laikipia. The idea about this choice was to look at the various geographical locations within Kenya, those within the Rift Valley, those in the northern part of the country, those in the Asa region, and those in the central region, to ensure that we're able to capture the true essence of counties from a standpoint of their geological formation and their operations. And this is the 10 counties that were selected for the pilot phase of this particular exercise. This work started off in October 2022 and culminated in April 2024, where we launched the County Green Finance Assessment Report, which are available online for each of the 10 counties, detailing our findings across those 4 major sectors or sections I had highlighted earlier. And this work was led by Augusto and Co, being the lead consultant, with support from the National Treasury and Economic Planning, also supported by the Capital Market Authority in Kenya, also the Nairobi Securities Exchange Adaptation Consortium, and our sponsors and financiers, FSD Kenya. This was the first ever analysis at the subnational level to understand what assets exist, how can those assets be monetized, and how can we match those assets with potential financing options that exist. So I'll take you through some of the findings from this particular assessment, just to whet your appetite. But as I mentioned, these reports are available online, free to download, free to read, 50 to 60-page detail on the findings we saw. So we identified in the course of this assessment that there are 4 major clusters that we find in Kenya. We see one of the clusters as what we call the agriculture-based clusters, where you have the agro-economy-driven counties, and the question becomes, what type of financing initiatives, what are the low-hanging fruits we can't see from this particular type of assessment we have done? For those type of agriculture-driven counties, what we emphasized and what we saw on ground that could become new initiatives could be, we could begin to look at climate-smart agriculture as potential opportunities for those kind of counties. Counties like Nandi, counties like Kirinyaga, we can leverage climate-smart agriculture as a low-hanging fruit for those kind of counties. We also saw agro-processing. Can we begin to add value? Now, this is for the agri-based counties in Kenya. We look at what we call the ASA ecosystems. ASA here means the arid and semi-arid counties. Now, for this part of counties, we see high potential, solar potential, renewable energy potential, and the understanding is what type of financing investments can go into these counties. Huge solar opportunity, solar generation opportunity exists, water infrastructure, and also ecosystem rehabilitation. These are opportunities where financing can meet in those specific counties we had mentioned. If you look at the next step, we have what we call the urban counties, counties that are rapidly growing in urbanization, the likes of Nairobi, Kisumu. Those are cities we assessed. And for those particular cities, they have high population density because there's a lot of rural-urban migration in those cities. And what could be the potential challenges? Housing becomes one of the challenges. Sewage, which is water and sanitation, becomes another challenge, and therefore presents low-hanging fruits for financing activities in those. And finally, we looked at another cluster, what we call the rapidly urbanizing counties. They are not as urbanized or as cities as the former ones, but they are rapidly urbanizing, such as Embu. Embu County is one of those counties. And what opportunities did we see here in terms of low-hanging fruits? We saw resilient agricultural processes. We also found out that it's possible to have low-cost housing, such that we limit the rural-urban migration. So these are the 4 clusters where counties in Kenya would typically fall into, because our initial pilot assessment covered the geography of Kenya, and therefore we're able to put counties into each of these particular space, and therefore it helps us in determining what potential green investments can go to specific counties. And this takes us to our final assessment in terms of the outcomes. What did we see as outcomes under the assessment we have done, which is what gave rise to the next phase of this assignment. In terms of outcomes, we start off from the economic and fiscal assessment outcome. First of all, significant dependence on the exchequer. A lot of counties rely on the share of revenue from the government for sustenance, and we realize we need to find ways for them to become more independent, increasing their own source revenue, and also help to ensure that we don't rely too much, because once the national government is challenged, it dovetails to everyone at the county level. We thought this is one of the fiscal challenges we saw on ground. Another challenge we saw was low diversified economic base. Is either you're agrarian, focused wholly on agriculture, or you're non-agrarian, and therefore you need to have a diversified pool of economic base to be able to drive activities within that county. Fantastically, Kenya has had a very stable political environment, which dovetails to the counties, and therefore it's a plus for Kenya in terms of the economic and fiscal assessment we have conducted. Also, we understood the high mobile banking penetration level. Kenya is one of those countries within Africa, and I can say globally, that has a very high mobile banking penetration, many thanks to M-Pesa, which is led by Safaricom. Today, Kenya sits at over 83% financial inclusion. And that is massive, and that's an opportunity, because we can begin to reach those at the lowest level through financing. Also, we looked at the credit risk assessment. Yes, we realized low fiscal autonomy at the national and the county level. We also understand limited financial flexibility because of their dependence on the national government exchequer. However, we see opportunities from a financial condition standpoint in terms of improvement, stability, supports agricultural activities, and therefore we believe that the risk profile of the counties we had assessed is between medium to high risk. Speaking about the green asset and sectors, these are the laundry list of sectors we assessed and saw projects, potential projects that can be financed. It covers agriculture and livestock. It covers water and sanitation, public infrastructure, waste management, renewable energy, greenhousing, forestry, natural resources, trade and industrialization. And finally, in terms of the capabilities, a lot of the countries have signed up to what we call the CCCF mechanism, the Climate Change Fund mechanism, which means they already have structures to be able to mainstream climate change from the high level to the lowest level. And that's imperative because we need to have structures in line with the tandem of the green bond principles. You must have structures to mainstream climate finance to the lowest level. And this exists, meaning governance structures already exist at the local level. There's a growing knowledge of climate finance and sustainable finance, and also countries are open to creative financing structures, which we'll be speaking about during the panel, because there are new financing structures that countries are willing and open and happy to embrace. Finally, this takes us to where do we go from here? Beyond an assessment, beyond the reports, we identified projects. We need to match projects with finance, and that's where FSD Kenya created the County Green Investment Facility, which is now managed by PwC Kenya. What is the purpose of this particular facility? In a short sentence, to match projects with financing, appropriate, suitable financing. Just like we explained, different clusters, different typology of projects. So we need to have a facility that supports this project in preparation to ensure that they produce bankable projects that have developmental impact. And that's the goal of this whole exercise. So at this juncture, I'll say thank you for your time.
Ike has taken some minutes. So I'll quickly run to the panelist discussion, and would you kindly take your seats? I would like to call Dr. Yasuko Inoue, expert. Please take your seat, far end on the other side. She's an expert on forestry, policy and extension at the JICA SFS Correct project. Second panelist is Dr. Monica Nderitu, who is the Regional Environment and Climate Change Advisor at VI Agroforest. Mr. Alex Nyaga, who is a partner at PwC Kenya, the man on the spot. The last presentation was matching innovative financial models to appropriate happenings on the ground. It would be nice to hear how far you've gone there. And please sit directly. Actually, I will call Mr. Alban Mwenda to sit next to you because you'll be talking about money. But if I don't sit facing him, because that's where the money is, and then Ike, you go back again to be a panelist. Albert, thank you very much. My first question to you, Dr. Yasuko Inoue. The government of Japan, and specifically JICA, has been working with the government of Kenya for over 40 years. One of the major achievements of the technical cooperation is an improvement of productivity of several drought-tolerant trees, species whose growth became better in arid and semi-arid areas. Over 40 years of specialty in that area, Dr. Yasuko. What innovative climate finance models which JICA considers as workable for landscapes and ecosystem restoration in ASAL regions? Just briefly on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for good questions. I would like to show a short video which on behalf of my colleagues from ministry and so this project is in Kitui County, that is one of the arid and semi-arid areas in Kenya.
In sub-Saharan Africa, droughts are becoming more frequent, worsened by the effects of climate change. And in Kenya, for the past 3 consecutive years, there has been droughts since 2020 that has caused serious damage, with 2.5 million livestock being lost. There's been loss of grains before harvest and an increase in the number of malnourished children, about 960,000, according to the report by UNICEF.
The starting.
was very tough because we dug the holes, we prepared the way you told us.
The tree on the left-hand side, showing on the screen, is Melia volkensi, that is known as African mahogany. That is very high value tree species in Asal areas and fast growing.
Visited the schools and had discussions with the board members and the parents' associations of the respective schools. It was agreed that the schools would engage the children through the creation of forestry clubs to plant 2 indigenous tree species, that is Adansonia digitata, known locally as baobab, and Melia vokensi, known as mokau. The schools agreed to bear the responsibility of clearing the land,
is very much famous tree species.
and preparing the planting bowls with the guidance of the project
not
team.
very known that
Whereas the project side
leaves
would bear
of
the cost
baobab
of
is
seedlings,
very much
the
nutritious.
initial water
It's very rich
and
in
some farm
iron,
equipment such as
calcium, and
watering
vitamins.
cans and shovels.
And but by this project, we distribute we tried to the schools to use the leaves of baobab at the time of the very last dry seasons, when it is very much lacking of food, so use for the school lunch to supply some nutrition to the students.
I like to be the manager of hot trees in Kenya.
Good afternoon. It's only through your effort that we have managed to plant trees in our compound, learn about nutrition. We also thank you for providing us with seedlings. As you can see in our compound, we have got lots of trees. In conclusion,
That tree height reaches about 5 meters after 1 and 6 months planting.
we still expect
So
more.
the children and the teacher need a lot of effort to make this happen. And we provide a certificate to incentivize their effort to be evaluated also as school teachers' point. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. So this is our answer to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yosuka, giving us quite exciting things happening in that part of the world. Dr. Monica Nderitu, as the Regional Environment and Climate Change Advisor, VI Agroforest has been working in Kenya, in East Africa specifically, again for the last 40 years, strengthening farmer organizations and capacity building the government institutions while implementing agroforest with small-scale farmers. In recent years, agroforest has been highlighted as one of the pathways to fight climate change by the Kenyan government and multilateral bodies such as IPCC and UNFCCC. Based on your long expertise and experiences in East Africa, both with the topic and in the region, what are the main opportunities you see going forward in agroforest, and what are some of the emerging implementing gaps you've seen on the ground?
Thank you so much. Yes, VIA Agroforestry has been implementing agroforestry in the region, East African region, for the past 40 years. And some of the opportunities that we see that come with agroforestry is one for biodiversity conservation, food and nutrition security, for social and economic enhancement, and for livelihood. And this is something that we have seen. I know you've seen Dr. Masharia saying that we have 2 projects in Kenya, the Kenya Agriculture Carbon Project, and also we have the Mount Elgon Livelihood Project, which are both based on carbon markets. And we have one more in Tanzania, which is in under Plan Vivo. And from these projects, we have experienced some challenges, and one thing that is related to agroforestry development is lack of policy. And when we do not have the policy, it means then that the governments are not able to budget for the agroforestry development, and we look forward to speedy launching of the National Agroforestry Strategy to be able to support the agroforestry work in Kenya. We also have the problem with the communities, especially the smallholder farmers. We are using all this jargon. People don't know what is this climate fund, for example. Where do we see it? How do we bring it close to the farmers? That means bridging the gap between the international climate finance, the government, and what happens on the ground. Where do we go for this funding? That is something that our smallholder farmers are experiencing, and they are not able to tap into that. Besides that, there are other issues, like for gender. When we are implementing agroforestry, the tree tenure, for example, is a question that the government can also come in and support to ensure that both young people and even the women can be able to access land, for example, and to own the tree, because tree is a long-term investment that requires land. And in most cases, we have a patriarchal system that supports the men and more than the women. We also have the issue of budgets that I had mentioned, but now the standard budgeting that we have is not really taking care of the agroforestry challenges that are there. And we look forward to our government and also in the region to look into how to budgeting and including the people, the farmers, the stakeholders that are there, to engage us in that process so that we can be able to support in the budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some people actually don't know about the climate fund that you just talked about, so it's also good to capacity build so that you can get access increasing. PwC Kenya, Mr. Alex Nyaga, you are responsible for creating robust investment proposals, drawing from the work that EK presented now and looking at the assets that counties have. And you have now gone into 5 counties out of the 10 selected. How are you linking community and local government priorities into proposals that you are matching to financial models? But specifically also, how are you balancing priorities of communities against what you know investors will find attractive?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Chebi. I think that's a very loaded question. But yes, indeed, I think we've visited these counties, and I think what is coming forth is there's a lot of local ownership of some of these opportunities that I imagine. The governors that we've met, they're giving the political goodwill for these projects. We've seen the local county governments very engaged and very interested in these projects. They are putting their skin in the game, so there's opportunity there where they are setting aside land, for example, for these investments to be made. They are also ready to set up whatever local legislation that is required to make these opportunities go to scale. Something else that we've seen is that they're very open to public participation. We know in Kenya, for you to invest in those opportunities, the local communities have to buy in. So the county integrated development plans, most of them already cover those projects. So creating a very good enabling environment for those projects to already kick off. Now you talk about the emerging opportunities. I think Ike talked to some of the projects that we are seeing, but one of the things the national government has been pushing and local counties have taken up is the issue of industrial parks. So we are seeing there's a lot of interest for them to set up aside those agriculture industrial parks, and those would really help investors come into a structure that is already well developed. Now, one of the things that you talk about as a challenge, which it's both a challenge and an opportunity, and I've seen that in all the financing events that I've gone through in this particular COP, is the issue of project preparation. A lot of projects that we find are not prepared yet. So there are good ideas that counties have. They are at concept stage, but then there's a lot of work that needs to be done to develop these projects to make them bankable. This project will really focus on attracting private investments, and therefore the opportunities to identify what is the return on investment on any of the money that is being put forth. So how we are mitigating this is we are trying to seek blended financing, where some of the finance can be used to prepare these projects and undertake feasibility studies, which is what investors would typically not pay for. So using those kind of funds to prepare the projects, and then now match those projects with investors who are ready now to put in the commercial type of investment.
Thank you. I know we have about 10 minutes. Can I allow the floor 1 or 2 questions before I return back? One hand up quickly, then I... Good. You got everything right. No question from the floor. All right, madam.
Yes.
Please say your name, organization, and ask your question.
Okay. My name is Frida Mokaya from the judiciary. So I just want to ask, how does climate financing interact with other forms of international aid and development financing?
Excellent. That is a question directly to Mr. Albert. The convergence. Allow me to ask you later, Albert, together with 2 other questions, convergence with other institutions. So keep that question. Thank you very much, madam. Any other second question? Here. Thank you, sir. Your name and...
Sorry, my name is Umar Salianka from Nigeria. My question is just, sorry if it deviates from the presentation. Can a subnational take part? We know we have been assessed with a checklist on the new project in Nigeria. Can subnational apply directly to NDC partners without going to the national hub? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your question will be answered by your brother, Ikechukwu Yagwam, who has done some work in Nigeria for subnational. Am I right, Ike? You will take that question. Final question, please.
Thank you so much. My name is Manei from Pelham, Kenya. I wanted to know which mechanisms are there to ensure that the benefits trickle down to the community, especially for the carbon credits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is the second question to Mr. Albert. Or any one of you? Any one of you wants to take that last question? All right. Someone else has taken.
I can answer. Yes, the issue of benefit sharing and how the revenue trickles down is key in carbon projects, and this also goes into integrity of the carbon projects and also ethics in climate sector. What we do is that we work through groups in our carbon projects. They are contracted in groups, and they are under farmer organizations because these are smallholder farmers. And when now they produce the carbon, I'm going to shorten it. If you need more information, you can get to me. When the credits are generated and they are taken to the market, most of our market is in Sweden, and the buyers are there. We have the amount of money that goes to the farmers, for example, $4 per ton of the carbon. And this money comes to the group. And you realize that for the smallholder farmers, the money is not much for an individual farmer, but it is much when it is in a group. So in these groups, they are able to set the way forward on how to utilize the money as a group. And in most cases, it is put in the VSLAs, the Village Savings and Loaning Associations, whereby the farmers can be able to borrow the money and continue with the business in this low level. So that is how we are working with it. If you need more information, you can get to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ari. More conversations outside this. Mr. Ike, in 1 sentence, respond to your brother.
Thank you so much. Respond to my brother. I'm now part of Kenya and also of Nigeria. So fantastic. So thank you so much, for your question. So according to, I know in Nigeria, it's already a process where subnationals can access finance with what they call the use of the ISPO. In Kenya, yes, subnationals can access, but you need national government support. Section 50 and Section 107 of the Public Finance Management Act requires counties to obtain guarantees from the national government. So the structures exist today. No subnational has successfully gone through that process to obtain finance from the capital market, but the structures, the framework exists today. The closest we had was one of the counties we had assessed, which is Laikipia. So yes, Kenya is on the journey, and hopefully we'll be able to see one of those success stories in a very short while. Thank you
very much. So final remarks from Dr. Albert. Albert, and this is my question and the final remarks from you. So you have had a lot of conversations here. The judiciary are talking climate and finance. The counties are working so hard to access extra money, not necessarily from Exchequer, and very many other institutions that are looking up to accessing alternative investments. To you then, where is the convergence of all these activities, even the ones we are doing at the county, other partners working? Where is the convergence and where do we go from here?
First of all, can I respond? There were two questions that I think that are very important, and I will start with the one of the benefits, because we must feel the benefits. And I'll give examples of how benefits trickle down to the people. Two examples. In Kenya, there is a company that has been producing biofuel, which is clean energy. And out of that, they are able to draw, to sell their carbon credits based on what they are able to sink. And from that, they are able to push the prices down, and that biofuel then becomes affordable to Kenyans. The other good example, which is current, is on e-mobility. We have border borders transiting from bikes that are using fossil fuels to bikes that are driven by electric power. And out of that, the prices have gone down. And because the electric power is cheaper than the fossil fuels, not just in terms of what you burn and dispose into the environment, but also the fact that when you adopt e-mobility, you can also claim carbon credits and be able to drive the prices down. So that's one way. But that's not the only benefit. You save on Forex. You are able to accumulate your Forex, and therefore you are able to keep the foreign exchange at manageable level. You can imagine if the scale is wide, so you reduce your demand of Forex for importing fossil fuels, and you are able to channel that. So there are many examples that we can cite. Then the second question on the link between climate finance and international finance. First, because the investors who hold green finance want to identify, as long as you can identify projects that are green, there are financiers there who want to promote clean environment, and therefore they will price their funds low, and you can access funds at a fairly reasonable price as opposed to the traditional Euro markets. So that's an advantage. I think number two, increasingly, there are funds that are mobilized even through the international financial institutions like the World Bank and the IMF that are fairly priced. A good example is Resilience and Sustainability Trust Fund under the IMF, which is now supporting countries to embrace frameworks within the countries that are promoting green growth. Kenya is one of the beneficiaries. Rwanda is one of the beneficiaries. So there is a direct link, and you can borrow this concessional financing, which can replace more expensive finance, say, from international markets. So there is a clear link between green finance and what is available. And then coming to you in terms of convergence, I say the one, we must align our planning methodologies to attract this green finance. There is a tax component that is important. We must also build capacity, and our framework should support that. We must also look at the entire value chain of the green where we are investing. For example, if you have e-mobility developed and you have no infrastructure for charging, the uptake will be affected. So you must think about the entire value chain. And you must also think about the regulatory framework and make it easy for those who want to invest in green technology to be able to do that. So I think that's one point. I think number two is we must work with the people in the financial markets to design instruments that will lend themselves to green financing. What do I mean? Some of our, especially the people in the lower income group, they are locked out of financial markets. They may have good ideas about green, but because they are perceived to be risky investors, they may not be able to access financing. So what do? You can design products, and there are funds, there are institutions that are providing these services. You can de-risk. You can de-risk this group and enable them to access credit. I could go on, but I see we are being asked to. So I think we must think those two are important, and embracing new and emerging technologies. Remember, I also talked about carbon markets as an avenue for accessing capital.
Wow, this conversation is big. And it doesn't end here, but I've got to close because another partner is coming in right away. I really want to appreciate all of you for finding time to come and articulate some of these issues. I want to thank all the teams that organized this session, all the way from Nairobi to Kenya, FST Kenya team, Sarah McKenna and Zetsewera and your team at home, and the all partners who participated in this. Oh, Hillary from National Treasury, Kiplagat, thank you so much. Ada Consortium, and JICA, an Association of Women in Kenya. I'm so sorry, Dr. Mutune, I know you are online to close the session, but time is so up. I'll close on your behalf. So thank you very much. Go out now and enjoy the cold. A pre-photo session with my team here. Please, quick photo session.